Hello there, I'm John Caruso and welcome to our Automotive Industries Insights series. And today we'll be speaking to Brett Mills, a dealer principal with Ken Mills Toyota, Nambour and Maroochydore. Brett, often people can be blinkered in their vision or pathway to a particular outcome. If they're EV fans, they're just EV fans. But there are multi-pathways, as we've spoken about, and I like the fact that Toyota are exploring not just an EV, but a plug-in hybrid and hydrogen and all these other pathways as well. Do you want to explain more about what Toyota is doing in this area?
Yeah, absolutely. So Toyota's view, taking a market-led strategy, which essentially says that one form of technology, for example, battery electric cars, may not be the best solution for all consumers and all vehicle types and all ways that people need to use vehicles. So their multi-pathway approach essentially is the inclusion of battery electric cars, definitely part of the future, plug-in hybrids, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and sort of biofuels as well kind of come into the mix. So, what they're saying is, if we just focus on one form of technology, whilst it might achieve the carbon output, it possibly is not going to work for all consumers. What that might look like in real world examples, like a country like Australia, is you potentially see higher consumption of EVs in more metropolitan city type environments. Hybrid vehicles work well in most applications, but where people have long driving ranges, for example, we're starting to see now companies in Australia, there's, mandated carbon reporting coming in. So even some commercial vehicles have got an electric Hilux coming soon. It won't suit many consumers, but there's certain corporates that absolutely will be interested in that vehicle. Hydrogen and hydrogen fuel cell is an interesting one. Not really getting talked about a lot, but very invested around the world. Hydrogen fuel cell vehicles work well for larger commercial applications and actually possibly quite well in marine environments, buses, heavier trucks. Yeah, so the multi-pathway approach in summary is that it's like many forms of technology to both satisfy the consumer's need, but also to meet the requirements in lowering carbon emissions.
Are there any other manufacturers around the world that are taking the same approach, or is Toyota quite unique in this particular field?
I don't know that many are looking across as many forms of technology, but obviously the investment in battery electric cars is big. Like the industry globally went hard, and I think some are finding they went too hard too soon. But certainly there's some very significant global players working in the hydrogen space that's not getting a lot of airtime, and the investment is happening everywhere across Europe, Asia, and even the States. So hydrogen, I think, is a bigger kind of sleeper at the moment.
Can I pick your brain about the biofuel? That's a synthetic fuel development, isn't it? Is that something that, if people have, for example, if you're old enough, the transition from leaded to unleaded engines, and then suddenly if you had an old Valiant or something in the 70s, then you could put unleaded. Is the development of biofuels, and it might not be something that Toyota specifically developing or looking at, is that an area where synthetic fuels will be produced at some point, because they're quite expensive to make, aren't they? Now, and then people with regular combustion engines could use biofuels?
That's a very good and interesting question. So I think one of the things we potentially think is flawed in the new vehicle emission standards is that it doesn't allow for the reduction. It doesn't see the reduction in emissions that can be created by fuels. Fuel is a whole nother conversation around the dirty fuel we have in Australia effectively.
And it might not be something that Toyota specifically are looking at, or are they? Like the production of a synthetic fuel?
Yeah. So biofuels are not synthetic. They're created by vegetation effectively. I'm not an expert, but biofuels are really interesting for Queensland because we can effectively use our farmland to create biofuels. So it potentially creates an industry in a place like Queensland. And your sort of first question is 100%, you're kind of on the knocker where I believe, again, I'm not a car builder, but a simple retrofit to most of the engines, for example, that we have would allow them to run perfectly on biofuels. And so when you start thinking about carbon reductions, again, maybe there's a flaw in the thinking is everything's aimed up at the new car, but actually the fastest way to reduce carbon emissions is to reduce all of the millions of cars that are in circulation now, and that is through fuel. So the government required, I believe, a reduction in sulfur in the fuel in Australia. I think it was maybe last year, and a lot of that was actually about helping reduce tailpipe emissions. So that they're working on that side as well. An interesting point at the moment, because one of the ways that's being discussed to overcome our fuel shortage is to actually allow the fuel companies to go back to where they were. So I think lowering the sulfur and the emissions from the fuel requires more refinement, takes longer, all the rest of it. So biofuels is a very interesting space, and what some countries have done, I think, well in the way that they've created their emission standards is they have thought about locally, how can we potentially create or help create local or support local industry. So Toyota has this saying that they're using in this period of time where we have to go through this carbon reduction process, which is we're not going to leave anyone behind. And that's a philosophy that's driving the way that they are developing cars. And kind of, I guess, what does that statement mean? Well, what it means is if we just focus on one type of technology, it's not going to suit everyone in the way that they either choose or need to use their vehicle. And so those people potentially get left behind. So the multi-pathway approach is about making sure that future technologies that do meet carbon emissions don't leave anyone behind, i.e. you're looking at the consumers and you're making sure that everyone's got something suitable to deliver what they need, that the product's fit for purpose, basically, for the way that people need to use cars. And in a country like Australia, we've got a lot of diverse landscapes. We've got a lot of diverse needs in terms of transportation, and, vehicles are a work tool in a lot of cases. So that's really the essence of the multi-pathway approach, is to not leave anyone behind.
Toyota.